Welcome to our webinar today on behalf of the PCST Scientific Committee. We welcome you to this webinar to discuss collaborations between performing arts and sciences. The topic was proposed at the initiative of Emma Weitkamp, whom I welcome, and we will explore today the perspectives and insights on the potential of science and theater with the broader science communication practice that our guests have based on their experience. Today we have Carla Almeida from Brazil, Andrea Brunello from Italy, Robert Blumenschine from South Africa, Javier Garcia de Souza from Argentina, and Emma Weitkamp from United Kingdom. My name is Claudia and I am from Mexico. Emma, welcome. The microphone is yours.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you for allowing us to suggest this webinar. I'd like to thank all the speakers who will be talking to you shortly. The webinar arose because we recently put together a book on science and theatre, which all of the speakers have contributed to. So the speakers will be talking a little bit about their experience of science and theatre from the context of some of the chapters that they've written, but I think they'll probably also be adding in additional thoughts that they have. We would welcome questions in the chat. What we'll do is we'll run through all four speakers initially, but please do add your questions, comments in the chat as we go. And then Anna and I will moderate a discussion. So the plan is to have really sort of quite short, sharp provocations from each of the speakers, just to get us thinking a little bit about science and theatre and some of the issues and opportunities that arise in this space. And then we'll open up the floor for discussion. So I'd like to invite all of the speakers to introduce themselves. I will briefly introduce myself. I'm co-director of the Science Communication Unit at UWE Bristol in the UK. I've been working in science theatre for a number of years as a researcher. So my perspective is really more from studying the ways in which scientists and artists work together, some of the challenges that arise from that, some of the opportunities and some of the really strong benefits that come out of that. And it's from that perspective that Carla and I developed the book that's just been published. I'm going to hand over the floor to Carla first, and she will be briefly introducing some of the research that went on behind the scenes in the book, and then we'll go on to speak to each of the other contributors in turn. So I'm going to hand over to Carla now and turn off my mic.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm here with my colleagues that contributed in the book. We haven't seen physically yet, but it's very glad to share this panel with you. And I'm very glad that we put this together as a work of everybody who's here. So I am Carla Almeida. I'm working in a science museum in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And we have in a museum a theater program running since 1997. But as Emma, I work more on the side of the research, and I'm actually currently doing research, audience research with this theater that goes on in the museum I work for. And I talk about this experience with co-authors in the book, but today I'll aim more in the survey we conducted, Emma and I, especially for the book, with science theater practitioners, where we try to understand better the landscape of science theater in a global perspective, in a very modest way, considering there's a lot more we know that is going on out there. So I'll give some brief information on the survey, and if you have other questions, we can discuss later. But it was an online questionnaire with 24 questions among closed and open questions. We did some pre-tests with colleagues in the area that helped us to fix the questionnaire a little bit. It was distributed through science communication networks and including PCST and some of our personal contacts. We collected data in September through November in 2020. So in the middle of the pandemic, where when theater was not going on so much. And we had 108 valid responses coming from 24 countries. And this is just a little bit of the picture of the geographical distribution of our respondents. Well, I'll skip the profile of the respondents for now, because the idea is just to start really quickly and then open for discussion. So I'll just share some data that I think it's interesting in this context. Concerning specifically, to start with, motivations, benefits, and priorities for science theater, specifically in the context of science communication. We try to focus on this context specifically. So we had one closed questions on motivations, and just to have an idea, but I'll go deeper in some of the data. We also had an open question about the benefits of science theater as a form of science communication. And third, we had also one question where we asked the respondents to rank the priorities regarding their work within science theater. So with these three answers and data we put together, we can try to start thinking about some of the power of theater within the science communication, and that we divided in 3 dimensions. The first one that came first in our analysis was the fundamental perspectives. And within these perspectives, we saw a lot of people addressing theater as a way to provoke reflection about the nature of science, different perspectives of science. Also, theater as a way of contextualize science, theater as providing a way to situate sciences in its wider socio-ethical and legal landscape, including also humanizing scientists, and also to create effective connection. So the part of the aesthetic and the emotional power of theater came high in the answers of the respondents. And we also put together some pragmatic perspectives coming from the respondents, where we can include, for example, reach new and different audiences. It came as seeing theater as a way of going to different places and spaces, and maybe finding new people and new audience, more diversified. Also to provoke learning, theater as a way of conveying scientific information or prompting new learning. Also to stimulate activism. So we also saw many responses of people that were doing science theater or were working with it because they thought that theater was a way to drive change and action, such as performance seeking to provoke behavior or social change, political engagement, and including empowering communities. And lastly, we also saw some perspective of people that talk more about what science theater was doing for them as professionals in both art and research and science, for example, and that saw science theater as a way of enrichment, in the sense that collaborating with professionals from other disciplines offers opportunity for enrichment. For example, it might open up new ways of thinking and to explore new ideas. So I would like to start with that and start here for a moment, and then we can discuss this and maybe other data of the survey later in the discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. And now I'd like to invite Robert to come and talk about the experience of the past programme from within South Africa.
Thank you very much, Emma and Anna and Carla, for organizing this and inviting me to participate. I trust you can see my screen now. I am the acting CEO and chief scientist at PAST, which is the Paleontological Scientific Trust based in Johannesburg, South Africa. And our main function is to raise funds to support research into the whole field of paleontology across the African continent. But we also have meaningful public understanding programs, which are designed to advocate the social value of our shared origins, and also education, youth education projects to increase understanding of science and origins among school-going youth. All of our science engagement initiatives are based upon the science of our shared origins, in a concept that we call all from one, which is a good way to describe what paleontology does. It talks about the origin and diversification of life and humankind, but it's also an aspirational phrase, which we hope can influence how people view human diversity and humankind's relationship with nature. And it's based on two core facts that are conclusive, have been demonstrated by literally thousands of discoveries over the past couple of centuries. Those facts are the shared origins of humankind and the shared origins of all living things. And I don't have time to get into the science of this, but these two core facts we use to dispel some very widespread but damaging misperceptions about the African continent and African people, about human diversity, particularly diversity which is often characterized as race, and also about humankind's relationship with nature. What I want to focus on today is our foundational education project, which is the Walking Tall Science Theater project. This is a project that uses physical theater, so less of an emphasis on dialogue and more an emphasis on using the body and sound to tell a story. And it tells an inspirational and educational story about our shared origins. PAST initiated this project in 2001 to address what were really widespread deficiencies in the instruction of evolution in South Africa. Evolution, of course, is one of the core theoretical principles of all of the biological sciences, without which much of biology does not make sense. And so it's a critical part of the life sciences curriculum. The problem in South Africa is that during apartheid years and right up until 1997, evolution had been banned in the curriculum by the apartheid government. For this notion of shared origins was very counterproductive to promoting the separatist apartheid ways that the government promoted. And as a result, many life sciences instructors, certainly in the 90s and early 2000s, but still today, never received proper education that allowed them to teach this subject, evolution, effectively in class. As well, many educators are quite religious, and they see mistakenly, I think, that there is a conflict between their religious beliefs and an appreciation of evolution. The Walking Tall, it's a mobile project, so it goes to schools instead of relying the schools coming to a fixed venue. And it can be performed in a large variety of venues, anywhere from under an acacia tree in wildlife areas and rural areas, right up to sophisticated auditoriums. It's a 40 to 45 minute physical theater performance, which depicts the origins of life and humankind. And it's followed by a science workshop where the 3 actors involved have been trained in basic principles of evolution and paleontology, and they are competent to respond to most questions from the learners. We have presented these workshops now to about 1.4 million people, mainly school-going youth in 8 African countries, including Sweden and Belgium as well. And it has won a number of awards, prestigious awards in South Africa. We have a rigorous monitoring and evaluation system, which is based on pre and post workshop questionnaires of the learners and educators, which allows us to assess the degree to which learners have picked up not only the information about evolution, but increasingly over the years, what Walking Tall has emphasized is that learners begin to appreciate why an understanding of evolution and our shared origins is relevant to their lives. We had the criticism from some people that, well, this is a one-time intervention. How can you possibly have a meaningful educational impact from an hour-and-a-half presentation at a school? And so we developed a series of digital products, which we labeled Tools for Schools, which we have put on the PAST website. They include a video trilogy, a series of 4 to 5 minute videos that explain the basic tenets of All from One, African Homeland, Human Unity Amid Diversity, the Tree of Life. We also produce an educator resource manual, which includes at the end of the manual ideas for educators to implement simple theatrical exercises to get their learners to appreciate some of the very basic principles of evolution and understanding of deep time, etc. And finally, most recently, we've produced the first digital production of Walking Tall called We Are Ancestors. We produce this in collaboration with the really world-renowned Market Theater based in Johannesburg. We designed this to expand Walking Tall's reach. It also happened to coincide with the onset of the pandemic. And so when we had to suspend the live workshops of Walking Tall, and we have yet to resume those, but we have been able to premiere We Are Ancestors. We refer to We Are Ancestors, as you'll see at the top, as a theamentary, a term we coined because it uses theater to convey educational information, in this case about evolution and our shared origins. And we have partnered in screening this film now with 4 of our longtime educational partners, both in South Africa and in Kenya. There are several advantages of Walking Tall as an educational tool compared to learning from a textbook or classroom instruction. Most importantly and critically is that it's not only instructive, but it does so in a very entertaining way, a novel way, which most of the students have never seen, and it is therefore very memorable. And also, we make sure that we get the learners to understand why the evolution curriculum is relevant to their lives. And we do this by espousing in the production the major tenets of All from One, as explained earlier. The effectiveness of Walking Tall is repeatedly demonstrated by the monitoring and evaluation system we have. This system both permits quantitative evaluation of improvements in understanding about principles of evolution, but also it gives the students a chance to answer qualitatively about what the production has taught them about their understanding of human diversity and our relationship with nature. And I can't read through all of these, but I love some of them. I discovered that I love science. I want to be a scientist. Science is fascinating. To us, this was music to our ears. Likewise, teacher comments are almost universally very, very positive. One of these comments talks about how not only did the students learn something from the production, but so did this instructor. And that history has never been so real to them. So this program does have, we think, a very lasting impact on students, and it makes them want to learn what is in South Africa, certainly, and many other places, a difficult topic for teachers to educate their students about, and for students to grasp the basic concepts of. I think I'll leave it at that, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was a really fascinating insight, and I can see already a question has appeared in the comments as well. So we'll take that at the end. And for now, I'll hand over to Andrea, who will talk to us about the augmented lectures.
So thank you very much. Also, please let me know if you hear me properly. No, okay. And let me share the screen. You should be able to see it now. And here is your book. I'm very happy to say, that we managed to also give our little contribution to this. And in this chapter on the augmented lectures, which is what I want to talk to you about. But let me start with a very important phrase that I really take from the Institute B16. We do need new science communication models. And that's, I guess that's why we run science theater performances. Before I continue, let me just introduce very quickly who I am. I do have a physics background. I'm a physicist in training, but I also am trained as an actor and performer and playwright and director. I run a theater company here in Italy, in Trento, which is north of Italy, which is devoted to science theater, and that's what I'm gonna talk to you about today very quickly, very briefly, as a provocation, as I was asked to do. But also I manage, I teach science communication at the University of Trento and also the University of Bologna. So I try to mix these things, and I am very much aware that what we do in science theater and in this field of communicating science by means of theater is important, but also very difficult. There are some great examples of science theater. Here is one example, and another one is here. Very, very famous and important examples. If you look around, you will find more examples, and some of the practitioners here today that are with us actually are producing wonderful science theater, but in fact, it's still pretty much a niche. If you go to the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, which is probably the most important theater festival in the world that runs every summer in August, there are thousands of companies coming from all over the world. you will find out that there are very, very few productions that actually do talk about science. There is a stand-up science. There is a lot of shows for children with experiments on stage and things like that. But to me, that doesn't really work as science theater. And so as a provocation, I'm gonna, throw some thoughts at you. For example, that a lot of the science theater that we see doesn't really work in terms of improving what we call critical science literacy. In other words, the idea that we can actually not just know some science, but understand how it's constructed, how it's made, how it's produced, how it's tested, when can you trust it, what can you do with it, how far can you look into the future with it. There are a lot of things. Also, a lot of the science theater that we see deals with, more glamorous topics, biographies or very important scientific discoveries, things that we can call social anxieties like climate change or GMOs or, gravitational waves or Higgs boson, things like that. But in my field, sometimes I'm asked to talk about things like weird stuff like spin currents or magnetic resonance or semiconductors, and so I end up in a big crisis because I don't know. It's really hard to do that. How can you make a compelling story? How can you make theater out of, ideas coming from the, semiconductor science and things like that? And so that's a big challenge that we face in this field of science theater. The other big challenge that we face is that very often when we involve scientists, we realize that what they believe is important is very different from what the audience feels that it is that is important. For example, big themes that have to do with existential issues. Very often scientists focus on the science, but the audience wants to focus on the existential issues, and there is an issue there. There is this thing which we call the curse of knowledge. Sometimes you forget how it was before you knew something. And there are quite a few scientists that when we try to interact with them in our productions, we realize that they sort of don't remember that at one point in their life, they didn't know something about what they're talking about, and so they expect people to be at their level, and that creates a lot of problems. So this is coming to sort of the provocation, and we need to open, going from this deficit idea that I know things and you don't know things and I'm going to teach them to you through theater, through performance, whatever, to really a dialogue. And that's where the concept of augmented lectures come from. Now, augmented lectures are, in principle, really simple. They are about connecting a scientist and an artist on stage for this thing that we call a dialogue among equals. And it really is a dialogue, not in the sense that there is, just two people talking to each other, but it's a dialogue about what do we want to convey to the audience. Let's talk about this. Let's prepare how we're going to do it by means of art and by means of science. And this format is moving a little away from the classical science theater because it's not so, showy. It's very simple. Sometimes it takes less time to prepare, but very often it's even more powerful. And so here, just because we have very little time, I want to share just some examples of the latest productions that we made. For example, just recently we produced 4 new augmented lectures just for a science festival that we ran here in Italy called the Theater of Wonder. And for example, The End and Then was produced and is produced. I mean, we are touring with some of these by us, but with Massimo Bernardi, who's a paleontologist from the Museum of Science here in Trento, and the actor Stefano De Tassis, directed by Maura Petoruso. And the whole idea here, you see, Massimo is the one on the left and Stefano is the one on the right. Here, the idea is that you can look at the past to understand the future, and the two of them on stage share a story that is a story that they share to talk about this. And so it's not just a lecture, it really is, it becomes a story that is narrated. Another one is Molecular Voodoo by a professor in the physics department and the actor Enrico Tavernini. I directed this. And here again, the two of them, the professor comes home after many, many years abroad to, celebrate the funeral of the mother. And the brother who has been home has a lot of grudges and misgivings about the fact that the professor left. And so the professor has to explain what he has been doing over the years and try to justify why he's doing science. And so it becomes a dialogue about the importance of science together with what is the science that he does. And the science that he does has to do with simulating biological tissues by means of, physical laws. And so you see these are the two actors on stage. They play. One of them is a professor, but you never know. But on the other hand, it's quite a dynamic situation way, but it doesn't fall into the stereotypes. Just very quickly, the RNA revolution. Here we have Michela Denti and Maria Giulia Scarcella. Michela Denti is a biologist, and they do talk about the biology of the RNA and the vaccines and everything. And they do share a story again on stage. You can see that scientists really have to put themselves on the edge. And the whole point of having an artist on stage is actually to push out of equilibrium the scientists. So the human side comes out and it becomes very, very powerful. And finally, let me share the last one, because I was actually involved in it as an actor also. Here we have Possible Mathematical Worlds by Professor Walter Moretti of the University of Trento, Department of Mathematics. And I invite him on stage to give him this prize. And the prize is about the terrible science that he does. I offend him. I'm very aggressive. It's sort of like the Ig Nobel prize. And he has to spend 1 hour trying to convince me and convince the audience that what he does is worthwhile. It becomes really funny. It's really a beautiful situation where he talks about how much he loves to do mathematics, and he's very emotional about it. The audience becomes emotional about it, and we had a great time doing it, and we really hope to be able to perform it many, many, many times. So, I spent my 6 minutes with you. I have a lot more to say. I wish you ask questions afterwards, because I really want to talk to you more. But let me hand over the microphone to Carla and Emma and Anna. And thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was a lovely introduction to the form that you've been working with. And from there, we're going to move over to Argentina to Javier, who's been working on Escenas de Vida Aquática, hopefully not too terribly butchered in terms of my language skills. But Javier, I would love to have you now come on to share a little bit about the work that you've been doing as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I am sorry for the delay. I was with a little technical problems here, but I am here now. I want to say that I am very grateful to be here, not only here, but also to have been invited to participate in this wonderful and necessary book that I think it is. That and well, I have to introduce myself also. I am a biologist, actor, and dancer. As I like to say, well, I am from Argentina, as Emma told. As I like to say, I am one of the hybrids that are around the world, merging arts and science as a way of life, I think. I want to talk that in my scientific research, I am working in freshwater ecology, working with fish for example, and we developing some kind of aquaculture systems. And in my artistic career, I am trying to merge these many years acting and dancing and performing scenic arts, but now link it with public communication of science also. I think that another one of the things that I am doing at this and it is very innovative is that I am a comedian performing stand-up, scientific stand-up, and in every one of those aspects, I am carrying out things related to water. That's why Emma told the title of a performance, a theater play that is Scenes of Aquatic Life. And I have some images to share with you. I think I can share here. Let me see. Let me see here and here. Well, I think that is it very interesting that we wanted with Scenes of Aquatic Life, we wanted to combine science, theater, dance, music, and drawing. And we developed some show that is a combination of scenes. And this scenes combines that things that I have recently told. And the main topic of the play is water, and we are we try to talk about these themes like water cycle, aquatic ecology, and the relationship between water and society, with both local and regional focus. I like to say that this show uses theater as a tool and also as a bridge. That two words, I think, that are the two words that are more representative of what we tried to do, promoting a crossover of knowledge about water, not only as something that you sit and watch, but also something about you can be part of it. This has a modular structure, as I told about. These are a combination of scenes. It can those can be presented all together, making up a complete show, or split and recombine it in a variety of possible ways. And I am not the only hybrid there. We are some scientists that are anthropologists, for example, another biologist, and some of us are also actors, dancers, musicians, and some of them are only scientists or only artists. But in the process, in the creative process, this multiplicity of languages was something really interesting to live. And I think it is we can provoke reflections, for example, in the audience. This multiplicity of languages and stimuli, which it could be seen as a defect, but we think that it was designed as a strategy to reach several audiences. For example, I have here some images of some of these scenes as example. Yes, for example, in Dejarse Llover, that is in English is Let It Rain, starts as is there. It starts from a poetic text that talks about rain, childhood, and nostalgia, which is performed by an actress, dancer. This is true of it, while the rest of the cast, including another dancers and musicians, play a children's game, for example. And another of those scenes is called ¿Para qué lado está el mar? That is, which side is the sea? And there are two actresses and one actor recreating a juvenile anecdote about what they were doing at the bank of a stream, talking about the environment. And we try to put on stage different ways of think about the environment, those that are more with more information about it, or those that thinks about the environment as, for example, a stimuli to write a poem, for example. We also perform our show in another venues that are not theaters, for example, with children on social spaces where they go to eat or to play. And also we transform our scenes of aquatic life, working with them in workshops, for example, including new scenes or changing the scenes that we have performed earlier. And we also participated in festivals or, for example, science fairs. With this is in some fair that is called the water fair, and every stand is about different projects working scientifically with water, but we also bring there our theater. And okay, another thing that I wanted to say is that for the future, we aim to interact more and more with the public and reinforce the use of, for example, social networks to evaluate the impact of the play and improve its content with this information. And we think that because we had a lot of talks with the people, with the public after the shows, but I think we have to do more about it. And that's why we are working with children, because they have a lot of ways to live the show, that it is there where we really see the reflection or the entertainment that the show produces. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Javier. Again, another really fascinating talk. We have some really interesting questions in the chat. I suspect we may not have time to get to all of them, but I'd like to kick off with a question which I think any one of you might like to tackle. So you can raise your hand and be first to grab this question, which is, how do we strengthen the collaborations between artists, performers, and scholars or academics in different fields? And linked to that, how possible is dialogue between these fields? So it's sort of two questions, but I think they're worth answering together. So I don't know if anybody would really like to tackle the question about strengthening those collaborations. I think you're all doing that, so in different ways. So perhaps somebody would like to tackle that one first. Any volunteer to go first? Otherwise, I'll pick on you, Andrea. Yes, I think it's right up your street, Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, sure. That's what we try to do to strengthen the collaboration. Okay, so this really should deserve a long answer. I'll try to be brief, but it really needs a long answer because with some scientists, it's really easy. They are really eager to do it. They want to do it. They actually come and ask to do it. Especially the younger ones are very much aware of the importance of communicating what they do, and they feel the need to do it. They understand that they need to get out of their laboratories or, you know, the places where they work and meet people doing this outreach work. And so with them, it's really great. And also a lot of artists understand the importance of understanding the tools of science. Other times I find it extremely difficult. Sometimes I personally had to give up. I try to, you know, this idea that sometimes scientists do really have a hard time understanding what the audience needs in terms of not just getting in touch with them and creating a connection, but also in terms of understanding science. And so there we should use workshops and all kinds of tools to raise the awareness, especially in scientists, about what they're doing. And we try to do that also here, but sometimes it's really complicated. So my answer is, if we could come up with really interesting workshops on connecting science and society, inviting scientists to come in and also artists to come in, then I think that would really make a big step forward, at least for the kind of work that we try to do here in Italy.
Thank you. I think that idea of putting the two groups in the same space is really the first step, isn't it? It's really the first starting point for anything like that. You mentioned about the need to kind of give up doing the science. And Javier, I want to just turn to you on that front, because obviously you are trying to be the person who is in the middle doing both. And perhaps you'd like to speak to some of the challenges that you face in doing that. I think that would be a nice addition there.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing, because in my case, the time designated to perform art, sometimes it is the big problem to make another scientist to understand that it is also important, that it is also part of my work, especially when I am performing arts, thinking in communicating sciences. Maybe the more traditional ways to communicate science are more easy to another scientist to embrace, to for example, I don't know, give a talk for general public, or participate in some kind of media, TV or another. But putting oneself into stage, putting on a stage, is something different. Is something new. It's something that it is not only something that you just can add to your ways to communicate science. It is something that you have to train, you have to learn. So something that this issue is the more difficult one to make it valuable. I think is the word. It is also important, and you can do it. And another issue is to when you have to inform your what the thing you do in your science career. It is, but I have to talk about everything, and I think it is the issue is that the time used, and to convince the other that it is also important.
I think that's a really good point. And I know when I've done interviews with scientists, this sort of recognition by management, as much as anything, isn't it? It's recognition by the other colleagues of the work that you're doing, and maybe they understand in a different way what a media interview does, and so they recognize that in a way that perhaps they don't, particularly I think for the scientists who maybe aren't even on stage but are a bit more behind the scenes, and then it's sort of like, well, what are you actually doing? So I think it's a really interesting and important point. Before I go on, I'll ask Robert or Carla if either of you want to pick this up, although the next question probably speaks to both of your areas. Do either one of you want to add? Okay, in that case, we'll move on. I have a question about education and learning, which I thought went very much directly into the areas that both of you talked about, which is how do you describe the kinds of learning that occur in a science theatre performance? So, and in particular, the kind of person goes on to explain that with science theatre, we're often thinking about contextualization rather than facts, even if we're trying to be accurate. So what kinds of learning might you expect? What kinds of learning outcomes might you expect? I can see Carla's already unmuted, so she's keen to tackle this one, and then I'll ask Robert to come in as well.
Thank you for the question. I can start, and I think I can do a good link for Robert in this sense. First, before answering, I would like to mention that Mario Montenegro is here with us, and he's also a co-author of the book. Very glad to have you here, Mario. Hopefully we'll see physically in PCST. And also something that maybe I was too nervous starting to share is just to explain that the book is divided into big parts. And the first is we take the data from the survey I presented, and we try to tackle the main themes that occur to us as data from coming out of the survey. So half of the book is about, for example, motivations, formats, venues, audiences. And then in the second part, we have these case studies with 8, I think, case studies coming from different parts of the world and different experiences, and some of them are being shared here with us. So there is, I talked about the motivations and how we gathered some of the answers to try to tackle this, because it's multifaceted question, I think. And what we found is that there's many reasons why people are working with science theater, and usually it's not just one of them. So usually people have many reasons and think that maybe theater is a good and powerful way to tackle many motivations that are related to science communication. And the learning part of the analysis is very tricky, and we point that in the book, how we should try to understand this better, because they don't come up really high in the closed questions. Other motivations and other worries and other reasons come first. But when in the open questions and in some other questions that are not so directly about it, we see the case of learning coming. And what I think that what I can, putting many of these answers together, what I see is a more complex view of learning. It's not just about facts. It's not just about transmitting knowledge. It's not as an opportunity to learn more about the world of science in many different aspects, which can include content. But I think in most of the cases, it's more about context, more about the nature of science, more about the scientists that should trying to take out a little bit of the stereotypes and challenge them. And one thing that comes really high is the motivation to inspire reflection and debates about different aspects of science. So I think it's learning is important, but it's not maybe as a deficit model way of learning that's been experimenting in this initiatives that we are seeing, and at least that the ones that we captured with the book. But it's there, but it's complex. It's not just about facts, and this is very clear. It's a whole, I think it's a new area to explore what we're talking about when we talk about learning. For example, just to hand over to Robert, Robert and his group does a very good work of audience research and have a lot of data that he just presented some of them here. But one of the answers that I think it's very interesting coming out of the research his group does is that the case of the proud of giving the spectators some of power of their origin, their identities, empowering them as people that come from this place that is very important for the origin of our species. And it's not just about facts. I think, and please, Robert, yeah, I'm sure you can spend much better on that.
Well, Carla, thank you. Look, I think you said it very well, and in fact, I don't think science theater should be about facts. It should be about teaching learners how to appreciate the relevance of science. In many societies today, for example, the States, science is viewed with tremendous skepticism, unjustifiably, but so it is. And so there's that. But also, and more importantly, and this is what we really try to emphasize, is why is this science, the science of understanding your origins, relevant to your life today? And if learners can appreciate that Africa is where humankind originated, if they can appreciate that there is no validity to the biological concept of race, that black and white has no implications for superiority or inferiority, if they can appreciate that nature is not there for us to exploit, we do not have dominion over it. And they can do all of this from the brief exposure that they have in a theater production, then I think we've really achieved something, and it will make them interested in learning more, in paying attention in class as the dry facts of the matter, which are essential to learn, are conveyed to them, to really try to understand what the textbook is saying. As they laboriously read through it over a kerosene lantern at night. And this is the value, I think, of science theater. Look, I was, as a scientist myself, and one who had taught at university for many years, I was extremely skeptical when I first heard about Walking Tall. How could you possibly hope to do what we have trouble doing in a semester-long course for many students? And my gosh, the power of it is tremendous, and the power lies in the ability to change their view about what science means to their lives.
Wow, that's a fantastic point. We're at the hour, so I feel we may be coming to an end. And I know there are lots of other questions, but I think that really is a lovely thought to end on, the power of science to change their lives and the power of theatre to change our thinking about what science is. I think that's fantastic. I, however, can see that there are quite a few questions still in the chat, and some are directed at very specific people, very specific speakers. I wonder if the speakers might be willing to pop their email addresses in the chat so that people can contact them directly. I know there was a question about the making of the augmented lectures. There was some very specific questions about for all of you about different aspects around different kinds of productions or different contexts, so whether people have worked with climate change and so forth. And I think to some extent we've kind of tackled some of these questions broadly through the different talks, but I think if people would really just as I say, just pop those email addresses in there, and then please do get in touch with the speakers directly if you've got specific direct questions for anybody. And I'll also put my email address in there.
Please, Emma, I wanted to ask you, to you and Carla, how we get the book, And what kind of distribution do you have for the book in order to buy it from online? And do you send it to other countries? Let us know about this.
So it's published by Emerald Publishing. I would say probably the most effective way of purchasing it is actually as an ebook, because then there is no problem with distribution at all. I will pop the link to the book in the chat. And it's possible to just purchase an individual chapter or the whole book if you go with the ebook option. It is available as hardback, but all these hardbacks are always more expensive. They do ship worldwide, but Carla, I think you haven't yet received your copies, is that right? Your physical copies? Whereas like mine have arrived. So
I did.
Oh, you have, yes, right. So there are physical copies, physical books available. It's just what the postal distribution is in terms of, obviously, I think it's a lot, you know, it was quite slow at one point during the pandemic. And I think it does depend on where you are in the world as to how easy it is to, you know, how long the distribution takes. But it is certainly available, and it is available as an ebook. Libraries could also obviously take it as an ebook.
Okay.
That's certainly what I've encouraged my libraries to do.
Okay, thank you all. And I also want to invite you, thank you for being here in this webinar today. And we want to invite you to follow our webinars through our YouTube channel, PCST YouTube channel. We have all the webinars, the last webinar, and this one is going to be available soon. And we are looking forward to meet you all in our next conference in Rotterdam next year in April 2023. And we are going to keep the conversation through webinars while we go to Rotterdam. So thank you very much, and have a nice day, evening, night, wherever you are.
And thank you so much for come along. And
thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.